We are live. It's Empire State of Baseball for episode number 56 on this Monday, August the 7th, 2023, airing on Twitch, X, and YouTube, and powered by StreamYard. Tom's still not adjusted to.
We're not saying X. Like I refuse.
What do you mean we're not saying X? It's X. It's not Twitter anymore.
Oh, Jesus Christ, people!
What are we gonna do? We can't lie to our fans. We can't say him. Hey, all right. So I'll say the artist formerly known as Twitter. Follow us on that. But don't worry, Thomas. You're off the X promotions moving forward. Yeah, I made sure to do that just for you. Just for you.
I mean,
all righty. Welcome back to Empire State of Baseball. It's been a crazy week for New York baseball. Whether which side of the coin you're looking at, either way, it was a crazy week. For the New York Metropolitans, they were hardcore sellers, probably best sellers of the trade deadline, and brought in, essentially bought some top prospects to add to their now pretty extensive pipeline. We're going to get into the Mets later on tonight, but just quick glance at it, Joe. What would you grade the Mets' performance at the trade deadline?
If you accept the fact that they had to be sellers and had to move, I would give them a B+ overall in terms of return. I still think Verlander especially could have theoretically bought a bigger return for them. However, given the fact that we don't know that, the Mets had bought at least basically 6 or 7 of their now top 10 prospects in this process and making their farm system highly, highly competitive. I mean, they're clearly now a top 10 farm system in the sport, and they have set the franchise up for the future. So I give it a solid B+ given the situation that they were in.
More said that the Mets traded away Justin Verlander.
Yeah, no, I think Oh, man. I'm a big Kate Upton guy. She was always a crush of me growing up, so it's upsetting to see her go. But I'm right there with Joe, though. I'm saying a B+. I think that's a solid grade. Granted, I would like them to get a little more pitching prospects. Yeah, but at the same time, whether you're building the farm through hitting, pitching, it doesn't matter because these are assets. These are assets for the future. Not all of these players they acquired will play for the New York Mets. I assume some of them will be traded at some point down the line for other players, such as pitching. So I'm not too worried about that piece of it. But overall, though, listen, from a Mets fan standpoint, at least it gave you something to look forward to. Maybe not this year, but it makes you look forward to the offseason. You got a lot of money off the books. Makes you look forward to 2-3 years from now with a lot of these kids. You took a low-end farm system, and now, like Joe said, could crack top 10 in some list. I'm very intrigued to see where they stand at season's end, but more to come on that.
And we'll take a deep dive into the Mets later on tonight in the returning Queen's Gambit. Hopefully, I'm not on a 7-second delay. It took a little while for Corey to get that response in. Hopefully, that'll get corrected as the night goes on. We know we have some bad weather in the New York, New Jersey area, so expect technical difficulties. We'll preface it by saying that. Thomas, there's been a lot of technical, organizational difficulties on the Yankees side of the house. A lot of stuff to cover tonight. But I guess Carlos Rodon going down. Does this come at a surprise at this rate?
I mean, a surprise. I mean, I guess kind of not. I think starting pitchers, and we're gonna get into Rodon more later. If they don't start the year, right? He was hurt at the beginning of the year. I just feel like they have such a hard uphill battle to climb to get back. They don't really ever get a real spring training. They do it through the minors, and it just doesn't seem like it's the same. And it just feels like a lost year. I don't know. The year is pretty much a lost year anyway. So am I going to be upset about Rodon being hurt? Yes, because he's on both my fantasy teams. So I have to put him back on the IL. So that's like a little frustrating. But that's probably why I'm most upset, honestly, because I think we're pretty done at this point.
Well, you put Rodon on the IL, but I know Jonathan Hernandez might actually have a pickup for you to replace him with later on tonight. It is a pitcher, so we'll get into that on the corner. So here's the rest of the lineup card. We got the Bronx is burning. That's making a return. We're going to get into the Yankees and all of their issues over these last 7 days. It's been a whirlwind of bad news for Yankee fans. We're going to also head over to Guess the Graph. So we usually end things with the game of the night. We got Guest the Graph, and Tom's actually coming back with the Guest the Graph. He doesn't have any baseballs anymore over his right shoulder, but he does have tonight's autographed baseball. Then the Queen's Gambit also makes a return. We get into the Mets trades and how to assess these next 2 months for Mets baseball. They sent down Brett Beatty today, so we'll get into that later on tonight. And then the Fantasy Hot Corner from Jonathan Hernandez. He's not with us live tonight, but he did send a video of his pick, so we'll get into that later on tonight. You said because he's a coward?
What? I didn't say that. Joe said that.
I think that's what you said, Thomas.
Damn, Joe said
say such a thing, man.
I don't know why Joe would say it. I would never say that about my good friend John Hernandez.
All right. Well, you're not allowed to listen to any of John's fantasy advice ever again. All right. The Bronx is burning, and it certainly is. And if my co-host would allow me some time just to preface a rhetorical question first, because we're going to answer it in parts because there's so much that's gone wrong with the Yankees organization over the last 7 days. What is happening with the franchise? How did this Yankees team go from one of the most respected, refuted baseball teams of all time to looking like just a disorganized, malfunctioning sports organization? And that's my rhetorical question. So we'll answer that in parts. Let's talk about the trade deadline and how the trade deadline was an epic failure for the organization, because you didn't know if they were going to go down the buy route and add those couple of pieces. The Yankees went into the season without a left fielder, with X factors of a starting rotation. Could have addressed those needs last week if they really believed in the team that they have, that I don't believe in. They could have addressed those needs. They didn't. They could have offloaded some players that were coming off of their contracts, like Harrison Bader and Wandy Peralta and IKF coming up at the end of the year. A couple players that are on the hook until next year, possibly could have moved the Gleyber Torres. Who knows? They did not go down that route. They did nothing. They got Keenan Middleton and Spencer Howard.
Was good this weekend.
Sorry?
Middleton was good.
Middleton looked good, but he was a reliever added to arguably the strength of the team. So let's assess it. Trade deadline was a failure. Tom, how do you feel?
Yeah, same. They did the exact thing they shouldn't have done. It was either buy or sell, and they said like, well, we're going to pick up a middle reliever, not get rid of the assets. I know there was some kind of reporting out there that Cashman was trying to trade guys. Hal said no, and yeah, it's just like another time where the Yankees are just stuck in the middle. They have a roster that is there's not a lot of moves you could make. They had things they could have done. Gleyber Torres, I think, as value is that like a 3 or 4 year high at this point. I think you could have gotten some decent return for him. Some rentals could have got some decent return for him. You didn't, and you still don't have a left fielder. You haven't had a left fielder since Brett Gardner is the last left fielder for the Yankees, and he retired in 2020? That last year he played. They haven't had a left fielder since Brett Gardner last year. Yeah, they haven't had a left fielder since him. They've just been trotting out guys to play the biggest left field in baseball.
Gallo was their last starting left fielder that they had. No, Benintendi, I guess, but Benintendi got hurt. The Yankees really haven't had a starting left fielder in the last 365 days. I mean, it's pretty sad. Now, Tom, you mentioned the point, and this is what kind of epitomizes the dysfunction of the Yankees. You said that Cashman had some deals on the table, but Hal blocked them.
I read that somewhere. Who knows when you see these rumors starting to get spread. I do think that I would believe that just for the fact that I think Hal he just seems like the Yankee brand doesn't sell kind of guy, and I do think that there's people in the front office that care that the Yankees are gonna hopefully have another season with a winning record. And I think that there's part of hey, we're not going to trade guys because we don't want to be a losing team. And how dumb that is, because who cares if you lose, 3 more games, but you could have really set yourself up better for the future. The Yankees front office and mindset on so many things, which you're more going to get into, is very broken.
Yeah, the Yankees are kind of running the franchise right now like an NBA team does that's kind of in that last playoff spot. They're never going to get past
the not in the last playoff spot.
You're that just out of the lottery pick. You can't improve because you can't be good in the lottery. You can never beat the teams ahead of you in the playoffs. They're like that 8th seed that is just kind of stuck right in between of being full-blown rebuild and full-blown going for it.
I think that's off, and they made the ALCS last year. Like they're not,
I think that I think that contributes.
Team.
But listen, look, the Mets won 101 games last year. Look how quickly they pivoted. Now they're an extreme case, but it's same with the Cardinals. At some point, you have to know. I think what the Yankee front office and probably ownership got caught up in is, look, we've treaded water this whole time. We haven't had Judge. Rodon is still working his way back to health, which LOL, that ended today. And we have some pieces that we're going to get back that are going to strengthen our team. So we don't need to go out and add because we got these pieces coming back and we've treaded water without them. I think the Yankee ownership got caught up in that and thought that, okay, Judge can come back and mask a lot of the problems, which if Judge gets hot back to the bat he was before he got hurt, yes, absolutely. He can mask a lot of problems, but it's not enough to fix the flaws in this team. This team has a lot of flaws. It's gotten very old in a short period of time. It's got very highly paid players that are borderline immovable in Giancarlo Stanton, who has played better this past week, and DJ LeMahieu. And now they got an injury problem. They're without their first baseman. Donaldson's out. Rodon's out. I mean, they don't have enough depth to overcome it, and that's what the Yankees used to have, and they no longer have anymore. And they didn't go out to find some depth in order to supplement the guys coming back.
Yeah, and I think
or call a season, or just call 2023. Corey, you had a point. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say. I mean, listen. Whether the ownership, whether it was Hal that said that we don't want to do any trades, we don't want to be sellers, whether it was other people in the front office. Again, we're not in the office with them, so we can't say for certain. But if that's even true, then why did they give Brian Cashman a 4-year extension? If this is the guy that you're sticking with, ride or die, and Brian Cashman, and he wants to make these deals, why aren't you putting your faith in the GM that brought the Yankees one of their best eras of baseball in that late 90s, early 2000s era?
He didn't, but
yeah. But again, if you're putting your faith in Brian Cashman, why aren't you trusting him to bring in the players that he wants to bring? Sell off some assets, bring in some younger players. And again, I don't know if it's Hal or not real quick, but quick comparison between Hal and Cohen right now between the Mets and Yankees. All right. Steve Cohen understands it's a lost season. All right. The season is lost. That money is dead money. He ate so much money, basically half the contracts on Scherzer and Verlander, full on fire sale to at least get some value to help build for the future. So from that standpoint, I want an owner that's willing not only to spend that money, but willing to just put the trust in the front office. And we can have a whole debate, is Epler the GM of the future or not? But I at least respect the fact that he gave Epler free reign to bring players in and then also to ship them out when the season was lost.
My only other thought between why there is a disagreement of between Cashman and Hal, maybe Hal Cashman was trying to make a couple of buy moves and Hal denied it because it would have gone over the luxury tax. And Hal wasn't willing to go into that into that threshold. I know they were trying to cut down, right, Thomas?
They were, they were slightly over the one threshold that they could have gotten under with some trades, but that only would have saved Hal money at that point. The comp pick that you lose because of it, that was already out the window because you're over it. I think the season is when that happens. The Yankees front office, it feels to me like Brian Cashman feels like he's like a distant, like a cousin of the Yankees. Like he's family. So we're not going to kick him out, but we're not going to, not that I think he's like a genius, but we're not going to also just let him do whatever he wants. Like it's still Hal's team and Hal's going to run it and he's going to let his cousin do some stuff, but he's not going to embarrass him also by just firing him. He's been there for so long and they're not going to fire him. He's going to retire.
He's not. Cashman's never going to be retired. You got to remember when Hal was growing up as a Yankee, he grew up being mentored by Brian Cashman. They were brothers, basically, more or less, and that's how they grew up. Cashman, he is never going to fire Cashman because he sees Cashman as Tom's exactly right. It's not even a distant cousin. He sees Cashman as a brother to him. He sees them,
but he doesn't respect him. I don't think he respects him like a brother.
It's not. I don't think it's that. I think it has to do with the fact that the Yankees are Hal's primary income and resource, whereas other owners have other businesses that supplement it. I'm sure the Steinbrenners have other businesses, but their primary revenue driver is the Yankees. They are no longer an ownership group that can afford to make mistakes. And I think what Hal is trying to do is trying to have the best of both worlds. He doesn't want to rebuild because he doesn't want an empty ballpark. And he also has this idea that we're the Yankees. We don't do that. We don't rebuild. We don't reset. We don't sell players. We don't reset. That's a four-letter word in his vocabulary, and I don't think that's in the cards for him. I think he wants people in the ballpark, and especially now, he looked at what the Mets did. The baseball goes through the Yankees for the rest of the year. I think he understands that, and I think that the only way that they sell is if they are in complete disaster mode, which is sub 500 at the deadline. That's the only way.
I'm going to move us off the trade deadline piece because there's so much we could talk about there, and move on to the next big thing. And Tom and I kind of talked about it last week when we went live on Instagram, and it was the Domingo Germán situation. An unfortunate situation. You go back to the Monday relief appearance where Germán was pegged to start. He comes in middle of the game. They're claiming it was an armpit injury of sorts that was cleared before game time. 2 days later, he gets put on the restricted list for alcohol abuse. Now, you can put it as you want, and I don't want to take the situation lightly. Obviously, Germán's got issues that he needs to clean up, and the Yankees did put him on a well-being, an inpatient treatment for Germán. But the Yankees are just grossly mishandling what's happening because we don't know if a situation arose on Monday that was stemming from this. But clearly, Tom, we don't have all the story, and I don't think we're going to get all the story of what happened. I know there was an incident on Tuesday, but what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
I was going to say, just to do the actual timeline of the situation, Germán had some sort of discomfort, I think, on Saturday in his armpit area, they said. He needed to see the doctor, whoever team doctor. I don't think he works at Yankee Stadium. I think he works at a local hospital. He couldn't get to the stadium until I think they said 5:00 on Monday, in which case they had to get a spot starter going because they couldn't wait to figure out what was going on. He got cleared, and then apparently he was able to pitch, which I think that had more to do with possible trade stuff of like we don't want to put him out there and we could try to trade him, and that's why. He then had the outburst of the situation on Tuesday, the day after the outing, where he broke a TV. He got into some arguments with people. The Yankees put him in the sauna, which also just like the last thing you want to do. Like if someone's drunk, they're dehydrated, and you're putting them in a hot box. Like that's very dangerous. It really is. Like I don't think we should. I don't want to make light of his issues he has going on. My thoughts on him are very well documented, and hopefully he gets the help he needs. He does have a family. He's married. I think they have at least one kid. So obviously, any type of alcohol abuse would be very bad for his household, and that's the most important thing. But you also, on the other hand, like Rich said, like you kind of can't trust the Yankees at this point with anything. I know you're gonna talk about Rizzo in a minute here, but we also had the Trevino situation this year, where Trevino apparently got hurt in spring and then just played all year to the end of June, and then said, "Hey guys, I really can't tough it out anymore." And they said he was healthy all year. You can't trust them with anything they say, and it's so frustrating as a fan base.
And that's the point. And that's the point where I'm trying to make here. I'm not here to try to disparage Domingo Germán. I don't know. I don't know what to believe from the Yankees sometimes. And I think Monday was a clear case of, all right, that's weird. Germán was not pegged to start. He comes in, looks fantastic. Looks like he has the best armpit in all of New York. But then 2 days later, gets put on the restricted list. And it's connected to something that we didn't even have on the table. So I don't know what there is to believe here, Joe. I mean, are we seeing this? Are you seeing this differently?
I don't believe them for 1 second that he was late due to a hospital appointment. I mean, when he came in,
he wasn't late due to a hospital appointment. He was at the ballpark. The specialist or whoever needed to see him couldn't get there.
Regardless, I don't buy that I don't buy that for a second. He was scruffy looking. He wasn't clean shaven. We know that's a no-no. I have a suspicion that there was other stuff going on, and similar to Tuesday, that he had an issue that put him in a compromised position to start. Listen, we don't know that. We're not in the clubhouse, obviously, but just reading the tea leaves, if you're waiting for a doctor, that doesn't preclude you from putting yourself together, making yourself clean shaven, and doing what you have to do to represent the ball club. So to me, that sends up a red flag right there. And then the fact that it was the following day that they went on a tirade. I'm guessing it was behavioral Monday. I think it was behavioral. Boone put him out in the bullpen as a punishment and said, listen, I don't care what state you're in, you're going to pitch, and whenever you're ready, we're bringing you in the ball game, and that's it. And we're going to pitch you until we feel like you're done. So, listen, obviously, not to make light of the alcohol problems and the alcohol abuse, you hope the guy gets help. You hope the guy can turn his life around, because it's been a real bumpy road. And listen, at the end of the day, if you can change yourself for the better and get yourself the help you need, that benefits everybody. But at this particular point in Germán, he is a liability. Even on the times that he can pitch well, he's still a liability to this team. I think he's thrown his last pitch as a Yankee. I don't think he will be back next year.
That's why I don't think he had like an alcohol thing on Monday, because the Yankees at this point, he was on the last, the last bit of good graces. If he showed up in that sort of state, I don't think I think they would have at that point said, you're done. I don't think they would have gone through a whole thing and to get him out to pitch just to get 5 innings out of the guy. I think that doesn't make sense.
But it doesn't make sense to me that you call a doctor, and we'll get Corey in here in a second. It doesn't make sense to me that you call a doctor in to check. The doctor says he's okay, and he pitches the same day. Why wouldn't he just?
I don't know. I think that's why I think there's something. That's why I think there could have been something trade deadline related.
This feels like a Matt Harvey situation where it was an all night thing, late to the ballpark, not in a state to that a professional athlete should be in when he arrived at the ballpark. Again, speculation on my part, but I felt like I've seen that story before, and I felt like we saw it as Met fans with Harvey when he did that. And that's what it felt like to me, because it doesn't make sense that you would have a doctor visit your player, and then 2 hours after the doctor's visit, he's warming up in the bullpen to pitch. That sounds dangerous in my mind.
Yeah, something was definitely weird with that whole Monday ordeal. And again, I don't know, what was it truly the armpit? Was he hungover? I don't know. Again, we're not there. We're not in the offices with the team. But I saw a post on Twitter today, and I want to call this out because I think it's a great example. And again, a prelude to what I'm about to say. I hope Germán finds a way to turn it around. He's had an issue with substance abuse now, with alcohol, violence. I mean, he had an 81-game suspension just a few years ago for domestic abuse. He now had the clubhouse incident just last week. So definitely an anger issue there, an alcohol issue there. I hope he gets it turned around, and I hope he comes back and does have a stable career, even though it's likely not going to be with the Yankees. But I saw a post on Twitter today, and it was mentioning who is a player that you've watched that is the definition of wasted talent. Domingo Germán, arguably in present day, is a perfect example of that. This is a guy we just saw about a month ago. What was it? The end of June, had a perfect game. I mean, the guy clearly has the stuff. He's a guy that can go out there and pitch a shutout or get shelled or have an absolute incident that gets him suspended. So you don't know what you're going to get with this guy. I really do hope he turns it around for him, not only for his career, but for himself, because he clearly has issues there. But this is such a talented arm that when everything is clicking is just as good as any arm in the league. I mean, this guy could pitch. He's got the stuff, but I don't know what it is with him. He's got a lot of issues, and I hope he turns it around. I know mental health in general, that's a whole separate conversation that we could have a separate podcast for. But I hope he turns it around, because right now, he is the definition of wasted talent, and it's nobody's fault but his own.
If I had to put one face on the Mount Rushmore of baseball's wasted talent, I'd probably say Josh Hamilton would be one that'd be up there.
It's a slippery slope, because it's also a lot of guys who could have, I think wasted talent is. I'm not trying to put that in your mouth, in your words in your mouth, Corey, but it could be kind of like, hey, like Josh Hamilton had some issues, and that led to his talent being wasted. I don't know.
So we'll see. And with Domingo Herman, I said it before, he's had an Oscar nominated 2023 to say the least. He literally could put a movie around this year alone. But hopefully he gets the help that he needs. My last point on the Yankees, Anthony Rizzo. And this is funny because I said in the last week, but really all this stuff happened within 3 days of each other between the deadline, the Domingo Herman situation, and Rizzo. May 28th has the collision. Collides with Fernando Tatis at first base, goes headfirst into, I believe it was Tatis's leg or hip. The injury did not look good. Didn't look good. I thought actually when he had the injury, I was like, all right, concussion IL. That immediately thought that. The replays, the slow-mos, everything. He was back on the field 2 days later.
Yep.
I remember hearing something. I heard something today real quick, Rich. It was just like, if this was the NFL, they would have buzzed him and sent him to get off the field. The NFL would have said, hey, no. You're done today because you're wobbling.
Correct.
He proceeds from May 28th up until the beginning of August to have the worst stretch among starting players in all of baseball. No one had any red flags about it. Even the announcers on the Yes Network was calling back to that collision saying maybe there's something wrong with him stemming from that injury. They kept blowing it off. Finally, last week, it comes out, Anthony Rizzo hitting the IL because of post-concussion syndrome, and there you go. Again, back to my original question. What is wrong with the New York Yankees? How have you put this guy in the field? How have you failed your team by putting this player on the field? And how have you failed Rizzo by putting him in that situation to begin with? It's unforgivable for me, Tom.
As I said, before May 28th or whenever it happened, he was actually off to a great start. It's not even like he was like bad and then he got worse. He was doing very well.
He was off to a career best.
He was basically the worst player in baseball for 2 months.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. It's again, you can't trust what the Yankees say. The concussion stuff is tough because it's not like a bum ankle where you could say, "Oh, you're not running right." I could see it. If I know I'm sure they went through some tests when it happened. But if Rizzo then says I'm fine, and I don't know, I guess you're not following up or whatever. I think testing for concussions can be difficult, but yeah, it seems so obvious. Like, hey, something's not right here. Like you're again off to a great start, and then you're the worst player in baseball. A guy who has been a great player for a decade. Another just black eye on the team at this point.
Exactly. In this game, I haven't watched every Yankee game this year. Again, I'm a Met fan, but I do watch the Yankees from time to time. I was actually watching that game and saw the play live as it happened. I was like, oh, wow, hopefully this guy's okay. And then sure enough, he's back in the lineup just a couple days later, like nothing ever happened. But clearly something happened there. He got concussed. And right now with the Yankees, and we're talking about how the Yankees are handling all of their team situations, this is basically the Mets and the Yankees, the Mets from a few years back, switching spots. What did the Mets and Yankees switch medical staff? Because the first thing that came to my mind when I heard that was Ryan Church, 2008, when he was flying to Colorado with a concussion. And Ryan Church that year, I don't know if you guys all remember, was actually having an all-star season. And what happened? The same exact thing. They flew him home. Yeah, he missed a few days, but he came back and he couldn't even hit the ball. He couldn't hit a single, just like Rizzo. It's an exact clone of how the Mets piss poorly handled that Ryan Church situation. Same exact thing now with the New York Yankees. And to Tom's point earlier, too, in the NFL, it's a whole different system. It's not even the team's call anymore. It's the league's call. So I don't know if that's something that MLB as a league wants to look into. I know MLB
probably not.
Probably not.
This isn't something that comes up too often. But I just meant the fact that the NFL, a league that is as violent basically as it gets, they're even like, hey, this is too much. Where baseball, the guy was like stumbling around, and they said, you're fine. Go.
Well, listen, they had their own issues with Tua Tagovailoa this year. Let's not forget about it. So concussions are not a perfect science, but they literally created an IL stint just for concussions.
Correct.
And to me, I think the safe practice would be that if a player gets a sizable blow to the head, whether it's a baseball or a collision or something like that, that player should at least be removed from the game. And at the end of the day, if you put them on the 7-day IL,
that's nothing.
Just as a precautionary reason, because they had a clear, forceful blow to the head, this could have been avoided. And I think the MLB has to look into these issues that the NFL has looked into and say, okay, we've created the 7-day concussion protocol, but we need to implement an immediate a reaction that if you get hit in the head, whether it's by a baseball, whether it's a collision, that you need to be removed from that game immediately, be checked out by a specialist, and then be reevaluated for at least the next few days to make sure that no problems persist. Now, maybe that happened. Maybe it did happen. I don't know. But there was clearly something wrong with Rizzo. I mean, he was putrid. I mean, he was flat out horrific. And he said he had the reaction time less than a normal person. Yeah. So this was obviously a clear issue.
In a sport that reaction time is everything. And my question would then be, for Rizzo's sake, you think he knew he was dealing with something, but because of the injuries to Judge at the time and Bader and Stanton still not being healthy, that there was a bit of pressure on him to say, I'm going to try to fight through this because my team needs me because no one else is healthy right now?
I think so. I mean, he does seem like a proud guy. I do think that there is it's tough in sports because you want your athletes to want to be on the field. So I do think that there is part of it that Rizzo probably should have said, "Hey, listen, I'm kind of foggy." Now, listen, if it ever came out that he said that to Yankee, medical staff, like I'm foggy. I know I read something today that he said he felt like when he would wake up some days he had a hangover, but he hadn't drank the day before. Like he clearly was like in it. If he's telling people that and they're just like, no, it's fine, then that is a huge issue. And that's something that MLB should investigate. And if sanctions and whatever suspensions need to happen because of it, go ahead. Because you can't have that in in professional sports.
I think it's also part of the thing when you have an injury or you have something that lingers for a while. I think if anybody here has ever had COVID and a 2-week COVID stint, you kind of by the 7th or 8th day, you kind of forget what feeling good feels like because you feel better a little bit each day. And then you wake up one day 2 or 3 weeks later and the congestion's gone and everything. And you finally like, man, I haven't been right in a few weeks. And, it might be one of these things with Rizzo where it's like, okay, he felt awful the first week or so, but he was progressively getting better. And he probably got to a point where it was just like, it was still there, where it was still lingering to the point where he probably just forgot what it was like to feel normal, and that's a big thing.
I don't know. I think the medical staff also, need to analyze his situation a little more. I mean, his drop off was so dramatic that you had to point out to the fact that this is just not a slump after, a hot streak. There's something wrong here. We see it on live TV when we see a player getting pulled out of a game or get talked to by the trainer. From the live eye, we don't even notice what actually happened, but these guys are so good at their job. I'm talking about the medical professionals that they pick it up instantaneously and are out there trying to talk their player out of the game. And I don't know what happened in the last 2 months. Where was the medical team looking at this situation saying, maybe there is something really wrong here? And it didn't have to take this long.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very questionable, and there's going to be more about it that I'm sure comes out within the next few weeks, and we'll touch on it when we get there. But we do have to move the show along and touch on YouTube. Joe, what's happening on YouTube?
All right, we are now airing live on YouTube. You can find us there, Empire State of Baseball. All our episodes, post-game recaps, and best of clips are there, including our interviews with both Homer Bush and Pat McCarthy. You can find them there. Just go to our page, hit the like button, share and subscribe it, and follow us for new content weekly.
Yes, sir. Thomas is back with Guess the Graph. Tom, let's get that ball up here. Why not? Here we go.
All right. So the first thing I will tell you guys is this is not a former Yankee or a former Met. So I'm just putting it out there.
Okay.
It's a well-known player. So I'm not, this is not some random guy. I guess technically it's a random guy, but not a former Yankee, not a former Met. Someone though you're all gonna say you guys are all familiar with.
Yankee or
Very interesting. I like the change up.
Then the white dot is this player's number, so I whited it out. So that's
Gotcha.
what the
Okay.
dot's for.
Makes sense.
Is this an active player?
No.
Okay. That'll be all I'll ask.
Well, and you have a couple other clues we can go through, but you kind of want to see if we can.
That looks like is that Sweeney? Mike Sweeney?
Not a bad guess. It's not Mike Sweeney. But this guy would have played in the same, not on the same team as him, but in that same time frame. So we're talking, the recent past.
Ryan Howard.
It is not Ryan Howard.
So the squiggly double in the middle. Oh no, it's not. It's not. It can't be. Oh wait, actually no. Let's go with this one. Chipper Jones.
It is not Chipper Jones. This player,
Adam Jones.
huh?
Adam Jones.
Not Adam Jones. No.
It looks like a Jones. Damn.
This player is a former league MVP.
Oh.
This is a guy. This is not Joe's BS guys that he throws out sometimes.
Come on.
This is not Joey Ballsack or whatever Joe had on that trade that day.
Is this
Ballsack was a good player too.
I mean, one of the best to ever do it.
MVP. That's actually probably throwing me off more than anything.
It's not Jimmy Rollins.
It is Jimmy Rollins.
Oh.
It is Jimmy.
Damn it.
Jimmy Rollins.
Did you meet Jimmy?
The last guest was going to say he was, a big time rival of one of our teams.
I was going to say, is there some sort of connection there? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's the updated standings. Joe is now really improving that lead here. He's up to 13. Me and Tom at 10. Corey still rounding out the bottom, but there's still plenty of season left. We can tell you, one core curriculum, which is coming up next week, can turn your luck around. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions and answers, a lot of points there, so you never know.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff, Joe. Adding on to the lead there, Jimmy Rollins. Did you meet Jimmy, Tom? Is that how you got the goal?
Yeah. So there was there was a day in actually where the Orioles do spring training. They were playing the Phillies and got 3. I don't want to whatever ruin fewer guess-the-graphs. In like a 5-minute span, got Jimmy Rollins autograph, Bobby Abreu, and Ryan Howard. They just like kind of walked right by, and it was just like boom, boom, boom. Mm-hmm. Pretty cool.
Star players too. That's pretty good lineup there.
Yeah, it was just like they just all kind of walked by. Weird thing about not weird thing, it's like a good thing. The Phillies have like a thing down in spring training where I swear it comes from their ownership that tells that like you have to sign autographs for people, like you have to engage with the fans because they are always the most like fan friendly players that I've ever seen down there. They always will like make time, and a lot of players do anyway, but like the Phillies more than any other team. This wasn't even at the Phillies facility. It was in Sarasota where the Orioles are. So shout out to the Phillies.
Shout out to the Phillies. All righty. All right. So good stuff there. Guess the graph. Now guess the graphs. If you want to go back in time and look at some our former guess the graphs over the last few months, you can go check it out on Instagram. Corey.
Yeah, go ahead. Follow us on Instagram at Empire State of Baseball. And you could also follow us individually. Myself at Corey Favs, Joe at JR Pugs, Rich at Rich J Rivera, and Tom at T Waspel on Instagram. In addition, you'll find post-game recaps. You'll find shorts. You'll find it all. So go ahead and follow us at Empire State of Baseball.
I was going to ask you guys like 3 minutes ago, Yankees have bases loaded, nobody out. How many runs did they score? And the answer was 0.
Yep. Well,
good.
That's a Mets staple usually.
In his final appearance on my fantasy team today against the White Sox, as he just traded him before our deadline. So good stuff. Go Cease, and then not go Cease after the fact. All right, Queen's Gambit. Let's get into the Mets. Now, we did allude earlier today to talk about the Mets trade deadline approach and how Billy Epler did essentially bring in prospects to fill up that farm system. I'm lucky enough to go catch the Somerset Patriots tomorrow as they play the Rumble Pony. So I'll see a couple of these players in the ballpark. But Corey Favs, out of the new prospects added to the Mets pipeline, who are you the most excited for?
Oh, I definitely got to go with Acuna here. And I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week, too, on the show. And anytime, and again, it's his brother, so he's only going to say good things about his brother. But to have the undisputed NL MVP say that his brother seems more talented than he was at his own age, at the same age, definitely makes me excited. The Mets essentially paid like $50 million when it's all said and done to acquire Acuna, thinking about that Verlander deal and how much they ate on that trade. But right now, Acuna, he's going to slot right in there in Double-A with the Rumble Ponies. Right now, slotted as the Mets' number 2 prospect in their system, just 21 years old. ETA is next season, so I'm very excited with Acuna. That particular deal, I know there were some rumors too. I know I said Verlander, but it was Scherzer. My apologies. Same thing. They ate about basically $50 million for a top 2 prospect. But again, there was talks too. Could they get another player in that deal? It ended up just being Acuna, but I'll take it. You trade a guy who had basically a 4 ERA with this team, getting a lot of money, who continued to underperform in the biggest spots, dating back to last season at the end of the stretch in September and into the playoffs. And you got a possible future starting second baseman for your big league club, one who's very talented. So I'm very happy with that Acuna trade. And there's a lot of trades the Mets made. I mean, we look at the top 10 list, and we'll hand it over to Joe to get his perspective in a second here too. But depending on which list you look at, the rankings might be slightly different. I'm just going off of the basic MLB.com one right now. You got Acuna that you add in there, Gilbert, Clifford, Marco Vargas. Right off the rip, that's 4 new players in your top 10, including 2 of your new top 5. So I'm very happy with the deadline so far in both Verlander and Scherzer, shipping them out to get some of these top 5 prospects. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'll be a little different. I'm actually more excited for Drew Gilbert. The Mets have not had a top outfield prospect since Michael Conforto came up. Nimmo was kind of an under the radar kind of guy. The Mets are terribly, terribly lacking up until this trade deadline of outfield talent. Their best outfield prospect was Alex Ramirez, and he was in single A. So this was much needed infusion of talent with him and Ryan Clifford. And a lot of scouts actually say that Clifford has a higher floor and a potential higher ceiling than Gilbert does. But Gilbert right now is the more advanced player. This is a guy who played in the College World Series with the Tennessee Volunteers. He had big home runs, big moment kid, excitable guy, has a ton of energy. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing Gilbert. He is the closest, I think, to the major leagues. And because of his position, he's going to have the least resistance to get there on this current as currently constructed Mets roster.
I saw a very interesting transaction today that I actually brought to you guys' attention with the option of Brett Baty. Now you're looking at the last 2 months of the season. The season's a wash. The Mets would need a miracle to even come back into the wild card at this rate. Baty struggled over the last few weeks. If you've seen on Instagram on our New York Strike Exchange, he's been a bear. He's been a bear for a few weeks now.
Yep.
But they optioned Baty for former major league players. It's not like they switched him out for the very hyped Ronnie Mauricio, which many thought would be up after the trade deadline. But I'm a little surprised even that Baty got sent down when the Mets are out of it. So what were you guys' thoughts on that move made by the Mets today?
I'm a little surprised. Listen, at the end of the day, and we talked about this at Volpe at the beginning of the year, as long as your struggles aren't being brought to a mental level, as long as you're not bringing your struggles at the plate into the field with you, as long as you're not bringing your field and struggles to the plate with you. There's rumors lately that Baty has been doing that he has mentally, he wasn't prepared for the mental strain that being in the big leagues causes. And this goes back to my conversation earlier in the year when everybody was criticizing Buck for not playing the kids every single day. listen, when you get called to the big leagues, it is a different animal than being in the minors, than playing in front of 5,000 fans. Now you're playing in front of 25,000 fans. It's different. The preparation is different. The season is longer. The breaks are shorter. Everything about it is different. And if you are not prepared for it, some players aren't, and there are plenty of players that have been called up and sent down in their time. If you're not prepared for it, it can take its toll on you, especially in the dog days of summer when the minor league seasons are getting ready to wind down. The major league season is getting ready for its stretch run. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm a little surprised. I would have rather seen him take 2 or 3 days off a week, have more of a platoon role, have time for him to reflect on his games at the big league level with veterans around him. But at the same time, if the Mets are seeing something in his daily mental approach at the ballpark, I can't blame them for making this move. No, I don't think it hurts his future development. No, I don't think it means he's going to be a bad prospect. It's just, unfortunately, the game of baseball. Sometimes guys get sent down, they come back, and they get more chances.
Yeah, and looking at Brett Baty's numbers lately, I mean, you want to talk about being bearish, and like Rich mentioned, he's been a bear on our list for quite some time. He hasn't had a hit since July 30th. He hasn't had a home run since July 19th. So we're not talking about a guy that's struggling. He's really struggling. And looking from July 21st, essentially to now, his average has dropped more than 20 points. He's not getting on base. I forget which game it was, but he made a pretty bad error that led to a few runs sometime last week. If this was a Mets playoff run and they were in the middle of the chase, it's an absolute no-brainer. You said they can send him down, let him play every day, reset, and then maybe you bring him up in September. Since the Mets are clearly out of it, I know a lot of the fans, myself included, do want to see the kids play every day. We don't really want to see some of these no-name guys and reject. I don't want to say reject, but reject type players, guys who haven't been able to stick with the big league club in a while. But I'm not going to go crazy about this move because it's not like he's hitting getting a hit every couple of days. This guy isn't hitting at all. I mean, he's giving you no production. So if you send him down for a few weeks, send him down for a few weeks. He'll be back up. He's going to be back up in September. There's no doubt about it. Unless he continues to do this bad in AAA, in which case maybe they shut him down for, I don't know, maybe he needs to do a darkness retreat like Aaron Rodgers. But he's been so putrid right now. Let him go down for a few weeks. Let him get that mental reset. Call him back up September 1st. And, let's see what he goes down the stretch.
Yeah, and I think the last piece I want to mention while we have a couple minutes here, Ronnie Mauricio. Now, Ronnie Mauricio, I saw the numbers before, 289 batting average. I think he's got over 15 plus home runs this year, possibly more. Mauricio has been highly talked about from the media as a potential player that you should have seen up probably by now. What is the holdup with Mauricio right now?
Yeah, I think it's mostly from a defensive side of the ball. I think the approach is a little bit worrisome. He doesn't take walks. He doesn't look to get on base. He's got a free swing and approach, which necessarily isn't a bad thing. But I think some evaluators think that he'd chase way too much here in the big leagues. But I think mostly this is from a defensive standpoint. The fact of the matter is he's blocked by Francisco Lindor. So that means he had to undergo a position change. Then they signed McNeil to a 4 or 5 year deal in the offseason. Now the position he was learning in second base is also blocked. So now they sent him out to the outfield to learn the outfield. The problem now becomes is he played 3 positions. He doesn't play any particularly well. And the last thing they want to do is bring him up and struggle defensively in the major leagues when they're not 100% sure about his approach at the plate. If he was a Gold Glove defender that was probably taken naturally to either of those positions, I could see them bringing up and let him go at it. But at the moment, I think they're worried about the defensive liability and the fact that will end up impacting the rest of his game.
And you don't want to waste him at DH either. That's the thing, because if he's going to come up and if he has a future with this team, it's either playing second base or it's playing left field. It's going to be one of those two spots. So you want to give him the time at those positions. I think he's another player that come September, we'll probably see him up. Because once September comes around and the Mets are all of a sudden 15 games out of it, season's long gone, zero pressure whatsoever. Beatty's going to be back up. Mauricio will be up. And we'll kind of roll from there. And maybe he goes, on one of those stretches where he ends September, maybe 20 games played, hits 300, hits 5 home runs. You say, all right, this is a guy we could build around next year. He'll be up this year. I'm a little surprised it's not yet, but at the same time, I'm not. And I know that's weird to say, but I know they want to give him experience at multiple positions. They're a little concerned with the K rate as well. So, we'll see what happens, but he will be up this year. He's not going to miss the whole season.
It could also be a situation where, because he is blocked, maybe they don't want to get him exposed at the major league level. If they want to try to trade him in the offseason, you don't want to bring him up and have him hit 150 for 2.5 months. If that happens, it's very well, it could happen. He can come up and hit 400 and be, the next hottest prospect in baseball. But you don't want to just tank his value if maybe he's going to struggle in the field, and then what if he struggles at the plate, and then you know where to put him, and
that's a fair point.
I think they also just got to commit to a position. I mean, if you're going to say, okay, we're going to bring him up for the last 3 weeks of the year, he's going to play left field, that's going to be his position, and when we roll into spring training next year, we're going to pencil him in as a guy who's competing for that left field starting job. That's completely that's what I would like to see. But I don't want to see him. Well, he's going to play some second. He's going to play some third. Then he's going to be the backup shortstop if Lindor needs a spell. I don't want. I want a committed position, because I got a guy in McNeil that can go all over the place. Why put that pressure on a rookie to be a super utility guy when you already have that guy signed in Jeff McNeil, who can play 4 positions on the diamond?
Ask the Yankees what they did with Oswaldo Cabrera.
Yeah.
I think it's a great piece to try to move along. You try to sell a team on a power hitting, switch hitting shortstop from Dominican Republic, because there's one in Major League Baseball right now who's tearing it up with the Cincinnati Reds. So could be an easy sell just from that profile alone. But we'll see that coming off season and if he does get moved.
And I do have one more point right before we move on, because I know Tom mentioned maybe that's a nice trade piece. And earlier in the show, we mentioned too, the Mets are acquiring a lot of these offensive players that could potentially be traded off. Well, guess what? Acuna, who we just talked about, is a second baseman. Mauricio right now is probably more projected as a second baseman than an outfielder. And Mets need pitching. Could this be a guy to look to swap? And again, there would have to be some other players involved here, but just one random proposal, and there'll be a lot of proposals in our offseason segments. What about a trade around Dylan Cease and Ronnie Mauricio? And again, there's going to be other aspects of that trade. It wouldn't be 1-for-1, but a trade like that, you're trading your excess in an infield position for a position of need in starting pitching. Cease was already mentioned as a trade candidate for the White Sox. The White Sox also trade away Tim Anderson, who was supposed to be their infielder of the future. So
maybe this shortstop can actually take a punch. So So actually, before we end the show with the Hot Corner, that was one of the best brawls I've seen in a while.
Oh, I love that.
When was the last time you saw 2 legitimate superstar baseball players just throw down?
That was a legit fight. That was a UFC.
That was not a fight. That was Tim Anderson getting knocked out.
It was Tim Anderson getting Tyson didn't even have that fast of a knockout. But when was the last time you see 2 guys square up and for 3 seconds measure themselves? Usually it's wild swinging and it turns into a tackling.
There's no gift that gets me more excited than watching Ruggie Odor punching Jose Bautista in the face. It's my favorite thing I've probably ever seen in my life.
And the radio call by Tom Hamilton needs to go into the Hall of Fame. Down goes Anderson. Down goes Anderson.
And honestly, both situations very similar. Joey Bautista and Tim Anderson were the aggressors in the situation, and they walked into a bad time. You can't be the aggressor, put your hands up, and then just get knocked down. That's embarrassing.
Anderson should focus more on his own play than pissing people off, because he's been awful this year. He's got 1 home run. So Anderson, and listen, he's got priors anyway. So as far as I'm concerned, Anderson's really not doing himself any favors. by getting into any brawls, because he's been brutal. He's half the reason that the White Sox have absolutely collapsed as a team, and he has lost a lot of credibility.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Tim Anderson, you got 6 days of sitting on your ass and having nothing better to do. So why don't you just subscribe to us on Twitch? Tell them more about Twitch here, Tom.
Listen, Tim, if you're out there watching, we would love you to join our Twitch live chat. I think with your suspension, you'll be available to watch next week as well, just how that might line up. But yeah, Twitch is our original home of streaming. So we would love you to download the Twitch app and to subscribe to Empire State of Baseball. The link is in our link tree. It is the best way to engage with the show, have your comments coming through to us. And it's a great way to get involved. And
And Timmy, if J-Ram ain't putting you to sleep, Joe will put you to sleep on the show if you listen in. So go check us out on Twitch. All righty, Fantasy Hot Quarter. Let's wrap things up with this. John didn't join us live tonight, but he did submit a video of his picks. So let's listen to John Hernandez with the Fantasy Hot Quarter.
What's going on, ESB crew? Back for another Fantasy Hot Corner. Let's talk about somebody who's just a model of consistency. Freddie Freeman, Los Angeles Dodgers. First baseman hitting .339 again. The guy just seems to always hit over 300 every year. He's got 23 home runs, 40 doubles already. He's on pace for just another ridiculous season. He's getting a little older, but you know what? He's showing absolutely no signs of slowing down. It's a good deal the Dodgers signed him to. It's only 6 years, $165 million, I believe. I mean, for the production that he's giving them, along with Mookie Betts, you absolutely are getting your bang for your buck. He's the model of consistency, and sometimes you just got to talk about the guys that are so obvious right in front of your face. Freddie Freeman, another MVP quality season.
Oh, yeah. Freddie Freeman once again, an unbelievable year for the Fred Dog. I don't even know if that's a nickname for him. I just gave him that. But Freeman looked great this year, man. And again, adding to that Dodgers stock lineup, it was such a great signing for them. A lot of criticism went to the Braves' way for letting Freeman go, but they also since replaced him with a great first baseman as well, Matt Olson. What's your thoughts on Freddie Freeman there, Corey Favs?
Listen, I'm a big Freddie Freeman guy, and even when he was a Brave, he killed the Mets, always killed the Mets, but I actually liked him as a player. He wasn't a rival that I legitimately hated. Good guy. Sometimes you see him joking around there. So I'm cool with Freddie Freeman. And from a fantasy standpoint, I absolutely love him. I know me and the Chooch have him in our ESPN league with a bunch of the guys. So he's a staple on our team, keeper for several years. So I love Freddie Freeman.
One of the best things to watch when Freeman was Brave was when Freeman and Jacob deGrom faced off, which was quite often. It was some of the best baseball that you could pay to watch for, because you had the best pitcher and you had legitimately one of the best underrated hitters of the game, and they would absolutely have these unbelievable at bats against each other. He always spoke very highly of Jake, and he was always a class act. He's not one of those guys that's naming his daughter Shay to piss off Met fans, but great guy. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, He is the epitome of a Hall of Fame first baseman, in my opinion. I think he's better than guys like Joey Votto, to be honest with you. I think he is the best first baseman of his era, as right after that Pujols era.
Yeah,
I don't like that he wears his pants really high. I don't know if anyone else ever noticed that. Freddie Freeman wears his pants really high. I feel like he wears it above his belt, like above his belly button. That's always upset me a little bit. Okay. Great player, but
we're gonna look that up. And while I'm looking up Freddie Freeman's pants, let's go to the second part of the fantasy corner here.
For the fantasy pickup this week, I'm going with Carter Crawford of the Boston Red Sox, owned in under 10% of ESPN leagues. Crawford's got 2 week matchups against the Royals and against the Tigers this week. He's pitched pretty well the last couple of outings. I don't know how much I love Carter Crawford going forward for the rest of the year, but if you're looking for just a nice little streaming option for this week, I think you can go with Carter Crawford and you're going to get some good value there. The Royals and the Tigers are both atrocious against right-handed pitching, so pick up Crawford, see what you got. You can roll with him after that if you want, but I think he's good after this week.
I mean, Tom, he's 6'5", but I mean,
Aaron Judge is taller than him. Aaron Judge doesn't wear his pants above his belly button. It's a weird look. It's a weird look for. They're really high. They're really high pants.
Tom, you're really high on Cutter Crawford.
Sure, why not? Listen, we're in the time of baseball season. I'm checking in both my leagues. He's not available.
You needed the pitcher.
Cutter Crawford, yeah. So, yeah, we're in the time of fantasy baseball season where streaming pitchers is kind of the name of the game. You want to get these guys in the 2 starts. So, if he's a guy that's available with 2-week matchups, you got to love it. I'm sure all of us are kind of in that pinch getting into the playoff season. Maybe you have Carlos Rodon on the IL now, and you got to pick some guys up. So, I support adding Cutter. I can't because he's not available in my league. I do like to pick up John's guys and just to see how they work out when I can. So I can't do it this time.
Fun fact, I actually dropped Crawford. It was about 3 weeks ago or something in the Yahoo League. So I had to activate Merrill Kelly, who came back. I had a lot of excess pitching. So I think Crawford at that point was the guy I cut bait with, but that was right before he started his better stretch. So
someone picked him up in my one league like 2 weeks ago, which seems like a very odd time, and has held on to him. So
yeah, I mean, I think he's pitched well the last few outings, and kind of one of those guys that can be a starter. He can sometimes be a bulk guy when the Red Sox choose to go with an opener. Sometimes they do that quite often. But he's been a quietly productive player for the Red Sox. Part of the reasons why the Red Sox are not quite completely dead in the water. I know them and the Yankees have been juggling that final spot in that division, but
Crawford was in a weird way. Red Sox are just one of those 3 or 4 teams that have fully invested into the bulk relievers. Nick Pivetta made it more famous this year than anybody with the way he went about. I think he's actually back to being a starter now. But Cutter Crawford, good pickup. So if he's available, go grab him. And thanks, John, for the pick, and make sure to give him a follow on his social media platforms. And also, as I mentioned before, give us a follow on the artist formerly known as Twitter. That is X now, at ESB Podcast, at G Gory, at JR Pugs, at Rich J Rivera, and at T Waspo. But who knows? Tom might not be. He might be off this thing by the next week. Who knows?
Catch me on Threads.
There you go.
There you go. Catch him on Threads, and maybe we'll get there too. But follow us on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. And next week, make sure to come back for another edition of Empire State of Baseball, episode 57, 8:00 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, August the 14th. I know there's going to be 1 or 2 weeks around Labor Day weekend that we are possibly going to be taking off. So we'll keep you guys posted on which dates possible, but just be aware of that. And until then, let's send our thanks around the room, starting with Thomas. Tom, what do you got for the faithful?
I'd like to thank DJ LeMahieu for grounding out with 2 guys on there, and the Yankees are chosen 2-0. So I want to thank him.
DJ. Yep,
I want to thank him for that.
All right. Mets are winning 7-2 on the back of Pete Alonso's 2 home runs and 5 RBIs. So thank you to Pete, as one of my fantasy teams is doing well, and John's fantasy team is doing well right now, but could have used those last week.
Yep, I'm going to give a thank you to Billy Epler, and this is a guy who I was disgusted with for the longest time, but disgust just moves to general disappointment. But it was a great week for Epler, though I can't complain. Thank you for actually making something out of nothing this year.
I want to thank God for not shutting down the podcast tonight. A lot of bad weather, but it looks like we've made it through. So we're gonna end on that note before the lights go out here. We'll see you here next Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Twitch, X. That's X, Tom, and YouTube.
Give it to you.
See you here next Monday. Take care, everybody.